All right, we today are going to learn about how to draw using only straight lines. Seems kind of weird because I'm going to draw this little dried squash. So let's talk about how to do that. But first, let's talk about why. So when I was in college, my professor taught us this technique, and that was one of those days when I saw my skills jump in, like my drawing jump in. I don't know if quality is the right word, but in my abilities, it just looked so much better than my normal drawings. And so this is one of the type of techniques that when you learn, it helps you level up your drawing skills. You have to have the knowledge with the practice, but when you've built up your skills and your practice, then you get the knowledge, and all of a sudden things start to fit together and you can make jumps right away. So I'm going to start drawing this and see if I can talk this through while I'm going. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to, of course, gesture and do my quick sketch here. And this, I don't have to worry about straight lines. I'm just drawing it exactly as I see it, right? And I'm keeping my lines loose, trying to sort of feel out that form here. What I'm doing now, I'm going to measure and take my comparative measurements, make sure that I'm getting it at least width and height correct. It's like 1 1/4, maybe a little less than 1 1/4. So I'm a little wide. So let's bring that down just a hair. Test that out. That's about it, probably a teeny bit more, and I'm good. All right, that's about our shape. I know I need to snug that in a little bit here. Measuring kind of across the top there. About 1 3/4 or so. Probably, yeah, that's about right. Probably shrink this just a little bit because we've already established the width across here to the height. So I'm going to shrink the top to fit the bottom. Okay, so we have our basic gesture here, have our basic measurements taken. We can measure more, but we're just going to use the basic ones here. I could use my plumb and level lines to kind of measure out a few different things, but I think we're okay where we're at right now. Most of it's okay. Now what we're going to do is straight line blocking. This goes along really well with the angles that we just learned how to do. You know, when you hold up your pencil at an angle to your object and then you bring it down to your drawing. So I'm holding up my pencil to the side of that squash. I'm going to try and transfer it to my paper here. Just like we did with the angles, but this time I'm actually going to draw a straight line in. So the idea with this straight line drawing is if you think about measuring something, let's say I want to measure, well, I'll say it this way. It's probably easier using a ruler that's straight, measuring like the side of a desk, than it is trying to measure like the circumference of a ball with a straight ruler. So we kind of think of that same principle here, where I'm using straight lines to measure something rounded, not because I'm trying to make the object more angular, because you'll see in the end here, we're actually going to make this really smooth, but because a straight line is so much easier to gauge and measure than a curved line. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a general measurement. I hold up my pencil to the side of this squash. In real life, it doesn't fit exactly to that. I'm just trying to hold my pencil and take the general slant of it. So in real life, it probably curves in just a little bit here and then comes out, maybe even bows outside line. But this line right now is good. We're going to start off more general. Some people start even more general. They might start off with something like, after their gesture drawing, they might start off with something like this even. Right? Very, very general and blocky. And that probably would have been good for me to start that way, actually. But here we are. So what I'm going to do now, once I have this first set of straight lines established, then I start looking at the smaller breakdowns. So let's look back at that first area. I have that general angle, but if I look at it closer, really I have like two different angles in that one line. So the first one cuts in just a little bit, like to maybe here-ish, and then it cuts out to make that little curvature in the squash. Then I'm gonna break down this angle here into maybe two different angles, or maybe three, we'll see. It's probably good there. So it's coming outside of where my original straight line was, but I'm staying within those original proportions. So let's see. Come down a little bit beyond that angle, but then bring it back over. This is just about okay. Probably let's smooth this out down here at the bottom just a bit. Hopefully you can start to see that this is beginning to take shape as a rounded object, not as a blocky, chiseled out looking squash anymore. And I can almost hear the questions of like, why worry about this, Mr. Jackson? I think I got that angle just a little bit wrong. Why worry about this? What's the point in drawing it square only to, or drawing it with straight lines only to smooth it out in the end? So here is my answer to that. As I'm sitting here going through this process, again, like I said, it's just easier to measure a straight line than a curve, even if I'm measuring that straight line on a curve. I know that sounds weird, but when I try and draw a curve, like the side of this, if I was going to draw the side of the squash, and I'm just drawing it curved like I normally would, I'm just guessing at what that curvature is. When I'm doing it with straight lines, I can actually hold up my pencil and line up along where it generally is and make that line. I can break that line down into smaller lines, but it's a way to measure and take the ambiguity or the guesswork out of your drawing. So it leads to a more accurate drawing in the end. And we're breaking it down to little pieces. I think one of the nice other side benefits of drawing with straight lines, both for art and maybe even, you know, for life in general, is this teaches you to look really closely at an object and see all the detail, because you're analyzing literally every single angle of this object. So I've done like a second pass, and I can even go through and do a third pass where I'm gonna break those smaller angles down into even smaller ones. So you know, this is where I'm gonna start finding those little tiny ridges and bumps in the squash. And I'm starting to smooth things out, but I'm actually still using straight lines. In a squash, it has like almost that ribbed looking skin. And so here I'm kind of finding those little ridges, those little ribs. And you can smooth things out as much as you want to. It doesn't have to be blocky in the end. If you draw really lightly, it's really easy to erase like your overlapping lines, you know, the straight lines, and get something really nice in the end. That is one thing I want to talk about also. When you're drawing this way, it really helps to overlap. So you've seen how I've brought my straight lines down beyond, right? When you draw it longer than it needs to, you can cut into it easier. If I just draw, so here where I just drew it like this, when I come back, if I'm trying to draw the exact line segment, it's kind of easy to lose the proportions there if I'm trying to match it up right along with. But because I can make this line too short, and then I have to make this one longer, right? But if I draw it beyond, I get the right angle, and then I can come in and look and see where this one starts, right? And I can start it where it actually begins, not where this first line ends. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of look a little bit closer and draw where it actually is. And then in the end, you can erase those. You just draw them lightly. So we're almost done with this squash here. I'm just going to kind of finish off the last little bit of this. There's a lot of artists when they're drawing that actually leave their sketches this blocky and straight lined. I think I got those first angles a little bit off, so we're correcting those now. They leave them this blocky. It's a style choice that some people like, some people don't like it. I particularly tend to like it, but that's just me. And that's about it. That's where we could leave it. So, you know, if you really didn't like the straight line thing, like the end result looking straight and blocky, you can come in and smooth these out if you want, right? But you get such a more accurate drawing. If I was drawing this typically the way I would before I'd learned this technique, I would just look here and try and draw really carefully. And I'd still get the general shape. Like, that's not bad, right? But first of all, I miss a lot of detail. Second of all, I'm guessing at these angles or these curves. You know, it's very possible that I'm getting a lot of those curves wrong. I'd obviously have to go and look and measure it, but it's very easy to get the curves wrong when you're drawing it with curves. But when you draw it straight, it's a lot easier to get correct drawings. So, you know, if I was going to finish this off completely, I could do straight lines through the whole thing here. Drawing where that stem was, drawing where some of the markings on the squash are, drawing where the shadow lies. You know, I can draw the shape of the shadow using straight lines. And smooth all that out later. So anyways, it's a great way to draw. All right, that's about it. Hopefully you learned something. All right, that's all.